Everyone there, Dan here, aka the Comic Concierge, and this is one of my graphic thoughts videos. This is where I go through 3 graphic novels, trades, or mangas I've been reading and give you my thoughts and opinions about them. Don't worry, I won't get into any major spoilers, but if you're worried at all, check down below for chapter titles and timestamps. So if you want to skip a book, you have that option there for you. But let's talk about the books we'll be getting into this week. First up, we have Kingdom of Z, Volume 1. Next up, we have Spy Family. Lastly, we have Syrup. When I talk about the books, one thing I do try to see is there any linking elements to the graphic novels or books I'll be talking about. And this week, that linking element's pretty simple. It's the fact that all 3 of these are mangas, including the first book, which is Kingdom of Z, Volume 1. And so this book is by Satsui Hirata with art by Lone Wakanuki. And I apologize if I pronounced those incorrectly. And the story is about Satsu, who is this individual who is, when we meet him, surrounded by zombies, and it seems like his life is about to end. However, he's saved by an unlikely source of Karen and Miki, who are, let's just say, rather eccentric in their execution of killing zombies, and definitely will utilize their sexuality when necessary, but they take out the zombies with reckless abandon, killing them relatively easy. Now, at first, he thinks that he's excited because not only he's saved by these zombies, but being saved by 2 great, gorgeous-looking women that are around your age it's not a bad way either to spend the last days of Earth. But he finds out that they really pay him no mind. They really talk down to him, and in a way they're a bit crazy. Mickey, for example, wants to create her own army of the undead to take over the world, and they're a bit sadistic at times. And he's like a little concerned about his safety. He's wondering if he's kind of got into the wrong group of individuals. And he does wonder too, like, they take these zombies out with reckless abandon. Like, it seems like they have powers or something that are a bit supernatural with the way that they're able to kill these people, but maybe they're just really good at fighting, or maybe they simply just have no filter, and because of that they will go out when necessary. I will say that this was a book that is, I think, not necessarily for me, and it ended up just being a book that I would say is okay. The first volume doesn't cover much. Again, it really covers them fighting off these zombies, kind of figuring out this world, and by the end of it, it's setting up the next volume where they're going to deal with some other individuals beyond themselves, and as they're searching for supplies. It doesn't, to me, do much to extend the zombie genre. The zombies are just zombies. There's really nothing new there. And 2, like I mentioned, how they utilize their sexuality, and to me, sometimes to a kind of a uncomfortable degree. Not that sexuality is bad, but there's a lot of like upskirt shots and things like that where it's like, okay, like it just seems a bit pervy in a way. And I guess, and they're certainly calculated in what they're doing. They're certainly trying to, I think, knowing that they can utilize that to get people off their game and make people uncomfortable, to take advantage of individuals, including Sato. But at the same time, it just felt a bit exploitive, and I felt like maybe they'll get into that further down the road. Like I could see them that becoming more than just this element of exploitation. But I just felt like at times it was like, okay, I get it. Like it just became repetitive to a great extent, a little bit cheesy in a way, where it just felt like it kind of took me out of it. And generally, it just felt it fit the mold of a zombie story and not much else. You got to kill zombies, you got to find supplies. The characters, they're fine, but they're like Sato as a character is hard. It was a bit hard to get behind. Like he just seems like a bit lost, and hopefully you'll see more development with him to be more than this guy that just kind of is pushed around to an extreme extent and doesn't really do much. But it wasn't an awful read. It wasn't anything that I said like it is. I'm mad that I read it, but I felt the entertainment value rather thin, the commentary rather thin, and the way that it handled the genre itself just kind of paint by numbers. And that was my biggest issue with this. It did feel rather paint by numbers. It was leading to the fact that, like, oh, these are girls who can kick ass and they look great, and that felt like its selling point. And the fact is that we have a lot of comics like that. So I just read this and felt like, I'm not against, like, I hate the criticism that there's nothing new, because I feel like that's an easy criticism. But to me, it's not necessarily that there was nothing new. There just wasn't a lot of depth here for one volume to really get me hooked into anything else. It's again a quick read. It's, I guess, if you love zombies, you want something that is rather fun and easy, there you go. This is your thing. But it wasn't one for me, and it's not one that I really have any interest in continuing. So I don't think I'll continue with volume 2. I'm going to get to a comic I really did enjoy, and this is Spy Family. And this is actually, I read volume 2 and volume 3. And I'll back up just to kind of give you a general premise of Spy Family, which is I just love the abrasiveness of Spy Family in the way that it's just like, we're going to be bold and crazy with our ideas, and you just kind of have to accept it. It's basically taking the idea of Mr. Nanny, that classic Hulk Hogan movie from the 90s, and putting it through the lens of the manga universe. And you have this individual who's like the best spy in the world, and he's given a task where he has to take out this important government official, but it's really hard to get to the person. The only weakness in his armor is by finding a way to get access to his kid or access through the school that his kids attend, because that will allow him to kind of get in and assassinate him in the ways that's necessary without causing too much suspicion. Unfortunately, the spy doesn't have any kids, so how does he go about doing that? He ends up adopting this kid, making it, and goes to the orphanage, picks up a random child, and that random child, just to make things even more fun, has the ability to read minds. Because why not? Is it really explained why? Kind of. Is it necessarily, does it make sense in this world? Not necessarily, but it's important to the story. And then, despite the fact that he has a kid, he realizes getting into this prestigious school is very difficult. It's like the Harvard of like grade schools. It's challenging to get in, and it has a limited enrollment. You have to be a relatively genius to even get in there, or like have someone that's an important person. Like even like huge people that are within certain industries can't get their kids in because they don't have enough pull. So there's a lot of challenges in that, and he needs ultimately someone that can help him with that, because he needs to have a complete family, because not having a wife is going to be points against him. So what's he do? He hires someone to be his wife. This wife also happens to be an assassin. He doesn't know that. Like their lives, or they don't realize that she's a spy. He doesn't realize she's an assassin, but she takes him up on his offer because she has her reasons as well. And I just love the fact that like this is an insane concept, but it's just a hell of a lot of fun. Unlike Kingdom of Z, that I felt like did not do much with like the genre that it's in, this does do a lot. And I love the fact that it's committed to like giving these characters so many different challenges, and how getting into the school. This second volume is when they begin actually in the school, because the spoiler that she does make it, of course, otherwise she wouldn't have a comic. But now that she's in, kind of like she was on the waiting list, and having to find a way to get her in there, and then the challenges that ensue. Because I also read volume 3. Again, I'm really liking this. This is one of my favorite mangas in the last few years, and I just love the dynamic between them. And you see the growing kind of connection with these characters. What starts as this ploy to find a way to kill an individual, they kind of become this weird family. But there's always fun new challenges, like the assassin's brother becomes a major player because he's also a high-ranking official in the government, and this government is basically this fascist-like government that has taken over. And if you're considered at all a spy, it's going to lead to a lot of torture and death. And the fact that like her brother is in this role, and they have a dinner sequence, which is a lot of fun. And it never gives itself easy outs, which I thought was great, because her going to school, this young girl going to school, and the complications of that, even being able to read minds, you think like, oh, she'll be able to cheat on tests because she can just read the minds, but realizing that she'll read the wrong mind and get bad answers or something. And there's the challenges of being a father. Like he doesn't understand those challenges. Yeah, he can like be this master of disguise and kind of be like a James Bond-esque person, but being a dad is something he did not prepare himself for, and all those different challenges. So I don't know. I just found it fun and a good time. The characters are strong. They are so dedicated to a specific trope. But I think they have really done a good job of expanding them beyond it. And the art itself, again, it's well executed. The action is there. There's not a lot of action. One of the biggest action set pieces in this is actually a dodgeball game, and I do love how it kind of picks apart the tropes of anime, and the way like there's a great moments in that. It's one of the funniest moments in the entire series thus far was that dodgeball game, because it does get into those classic motion lines, how it would adjust perspective to put a lot of energy on the page. but knowing it's this dodgeball game with like basically kindergarteners was, it just added to it. It's rides the line of being a spoof comedy per se. Like it's not a book that all takes itself seriously, but it's not all comedy as well. It's not like it's Naked Gun or something like that. It's really, it's hard to link it to anything because it's a lot of different things, and it's a clever twist on all of those. So to me, like, this is Spy Family is how you do it. Kingdom of Z is not. The next book I'm going to talk about is Syrup Volume 1, and this is an anthology series dedicated to women in love and the ups and downs of their everyday life. And it's just from a number of different creators, artists, and it's a lot of really quick snippets of life where, with anthology series, I tend to think, short stories in a way, ones that have a beginning, middle, end. And these are really, to use a cliche term, like very thin slices of life moments in people's lives. Like one of the opening stories is someone who goes to a laundromat, is reading something, and strikes up a conversation with someone about manga. They go back to their house, they read manga, she goes out, and like they end up having this weird relationship. It's another one actually dealing with someone on a porn set, and you have this kind of veteran porn star and a new star, and it gets kind of awkward and weird, but then you learn maybe that was purposeful. And there's just like a lot of the stories are just a few pages long, so you're not getting huge complex stories, just kind of general things about people in life and business. So it's interesting in that sense, because I talk about with manga, one thing I do try to find are books that are more, human drama, not, with the books that I've talked about thus far are dealing with genre stories, that are genre stories first and foremost, because I get a lot of that in comics already. Like I'd like to read something that is beyond that. And that is very much this, like this is, there's not a lot of stories in here about zombies or spies or like superpowers. These are human beings going through their life. And it was nice in that sense too, just to see the different ways culture experiences relationship and, seeing that on the page. I will say one of the issues is you see with manga is that one of my biggest criticisms and reasons I was always like hesitant to get into it is like I always felt that art styles lacked diversity to a great extent, and you could probably make the same complaint about a lot of comics as well, general American comics, and it's valid. But I think in this too, seeing it in an anthology series and just seeing how there's not a lot of variety in when it came to the art styles. Everything, like, if you told me it was the same artist, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. And the stories themselves, I did think did vary. They weren't ones that all felt similar, but none of them felt like complete stories. Like I mentioned, they're interesting kind of quick views into people's lives, but in the sense of if you're a person that likes anthologies because you're getting small stories pushed into one, that's not what this is. And maybe that's just the way this is. This is, again, only the first volume. So also don't know if like volume 2 will continue some of these stories, because I do think a lot of them could continue. Like they like to mention the one with the person meeting someone at the laundromat. Like you could really further that. It almost felt like an opening trailer, the opening scene of a longer film that could dive further into that relationship. And maybe that will be the case for future volumes. Now, the quality of the stories themselves aren't necessarily bad. They're enjoyable. It's hard to really get invested, because by the time you're at all invested, it's over. Which I know is an issue people tend to bring up a lot with anthologies, which I don't necessarily mind. But this one, it was just certainly noticeable, just because the length of them was relatively short. They were effective in that. I think they utilized the page count to feel like you're getting a complete sense of these people, and the character sense. Like that was impressive, because you did not have a lot of pages, and you were able to at least establish characters in the relationships relatively, whether it was people that were meeting for the first time or those that had kind of longer standing relationships. So that was impressive, being economical in that standpoint. So I didn't dislike this book. It just, it was a good read. It wasn't anything that I was like super excited about. I will probably try volume 2 just to see, like, do any of these stories continue? Are there any artists out there that do kind of shine more so than others? Again, the art wasn't bad. The art was effective. It just, one thing I love about anthology books, to me, a great anthology book tends to have a huge diversity and talent in storytelling and art design. And that really wasn't here to any great extent, unfortunately. So maybe that's what people want when it comes to manga. Maybe they have a certain expectations. And when that's why you're not seeing that much with this series. Maybe that will change in future volumes, or maybe there's, just because my American eyes are so tuned to, I'm missing a lot of the changes, which is something I'm completely open to. Maybe I'm missing kind of the actual diversions in style that to me, I'm just glossing over because I'm just focusing on just the larger aspects of design rather than the more specifics, which, I'm much more trained reading American comics, so I can point things out a lot more compared to something like this. So again, I'm learning when it comes to manga. So if you're a huge manga fan, please bear with me, because I've only really started reading manga in the last, few years. I've probably read maybe like 50 mangas at the most. But if there's any manga you would advise, to me, what I do is just go to the library and pick ones up, see if they're interested. And sometimes I end up loving them with Spy Family. Sometimes I don't. But I'm also open for recommendations. Anything that, especially like I mentioned, anything that's along the lines of human drama, or anything that's just really great, that's outside of the norm of the mangas you always hear about, like My Hero Academia or One Piece. Like, I not that I'm against reading those, but I'm always fascinated by the ones that don't get that amount of attention, and ones that maybe deserve similar amounts of attention. Let me know in the comment section below. But that's it for me for this week. Thanks for taking the time to check out this channel. Let me know what you're reading, what I should be reading down in the comment section below. I know there's a ton of comic book channels out there, so I appreciate any comment, any like, any reaction I get. Thanks for taking the time. Just remember, comics are for everyone. The key is finding the right one. Until next time, keep reading.